The day started like any other Tuesday, cold, quiet, and normal, but this one was different. It had been marked on our family calendar in bold red letters for weeks. Mandatory family meeting, 7 p.m. That was my mother's handwriting. It was always neat, always serious, and always meant trouble. I had a feeling I knew what this was about. They'd been leading up to this for months. An intervention, a plan to fix me. I drove up to my parents' huge house and parked my old Honda Civic in the circular driveway. I made sure to park it right next to my sister Amanda's shiny new Tesla. I wanted the difference to be noticed. That was the point. I glanced at my phone. 6:57 p.m. 3 messages from Marcus, my realtor. Everything's ready. Paperwork's complete. Congrats on your new purchase. I smiled to myself, put my phone away, and walked up to the front door. I had walked through that door many times growing up. Before I could even ring the bell, the heavy door opened. There stood my mother, Catherine Peterson, flawless as usual, her cold eyes looking me up and down from my simple black dress to my plain flats. "You're late," she said sharply. I wasn't, and we both knew it. "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied. The living room was already full. My father was in his usual leather chair, pretending to read the Wall Street Journal, but I knew he was just avoiding eye contact. Amanda was on the designer couch, glued to her phone. Her husband James sat beside her, looking as smug as ever, the kind of man who married into wealth and made sure everyone knew it. Amanda looked up briefly. "Olivia, we were starting to wonder if you'd even come." I sat down in the stiff, uncomfortable chair, the only one without cushions. Of course, Mom always did things like that, place the problem in the spotlight. "Now that we're all here," Mom said, standing tall like a lawyer about to deliver a case, "we need to talk about Olivia's situation." That's what they'd been calling it, my situation. Because I had left my high-paying job to start my own company. Because I moved out of my luxury condo into a small apartment. Because I drove an old car and lived within my means. Because I dared to do something different. "We've been patient," Mom continued, her voice sharp and exact. "We thought this little phase would pass, but it's gone on long enough. You're embarrassing the family." I said nothing. In this house, showing emotion was a mistake, like bleeding in shark-infested water. Amanda joined in. "The charity gala is next month. People keep asking what you do now, and it's honestly humiliating to tell them you live in a tiny apartment and drive that old car." James nodded like he was the voice of reason. "Image matters in our circle, Olivia, you know that." Mom nodded. "We've decided. It's time you return to real life. Your father talked to his contacts at Goldman. They'll forgive the gap in your resume. You can start there next month." I glanced at Dad. He was still pretending to read, suddenly very interested in the business section. Mom smiled tightly. "We also found a nice condo for you, better neighborhood, and Michael, James's friend, is single. He wants to get to know you." Of course, Michael Lambert. I already knew his type. A trust fund baby who burned through other people's money. He once tried to talk to me about investing, but I did my homework on him. He was a walking red flag. "Well," Mom asked when I didn't thank her for fixing my life, "what do you have to say?" Before I could speak, my phone buzzed. Marcus Reynolds. Right on time. "Excuse me," I said calmly, "I need to take this." I put the call on speaker before anyone could stop me. "Miss Peterson," Marcus said in a formal tone, "I'm calling to confirm that the sale has gone through. Congratulations. You now officially own the Wellington complex, all 300 luxury units, including the penthouse currently occupied by your family. Would you like me to move forward with the rent changes we discussed?" The room fell silent. Amanda's phone slipped from her hand. James stopped smiling. Dad slowly lowered his newspaper. And my mother, she looked like she'd been slapped. "The Wellington," she whispered, "but, we live there." "Yes," I said, "you do, and now I own it." While they thought I was failing, I was building. While they judged me for being careful with money, I was saving and investing. While they laughed at my small business, I was quietly buying properties across the city. The Wellington wasn't just another deal, it was personal. "But, how?" Amanda stuttered. "That place costs millions." "Funny thing about living below your means," I said, standing up, "you end up with more than people expect." I turned back to the phone. "No rent increases for now, Marcus. Let's talk tomorrow about renovation plans." "Of course, Miss Peterson. Congratulations again. I ended the call and looked at all of them. As for that charity gala, you can let them know I'll be attending. Since I own the venue now, I should probably show up. Mom dropped into Dad's chair. She looked lost. Olivia, I don't understand. No, I said quietly, you never did, that's the problem. I picked up my simple handbag and started toward the door. Oh, and Mom, about that hovel I live in, I own that building, too, and half the block. I reached the door, heels clicking on the cold marble. Just as I grabbed the handle, Dad finally spoke. Olivia, wait. But I was already outside, already walking to my old Honda Civic. Smiling. Because sometimes, the best kind of success is the kind they never saw coming. That afternoon, I got a text from Amanda. It just said, "Emergency family dinner tonight, 7 p.m., you have to come." I hadn't answered any of her messages all week, but this time, I replied. "Can't, board meeting for my newest acquisition, send my regrets." Of course, there was no board meeting. What I actually had was a private dinner with George Lambert, Michael's father, and the biggest property developer in the city, the same man my mother had spent years trying to impress, trying to get a meeting with. The restaurant we chose wasn't the kind with menus or prices. If you had to ask, you didn't belong there. George was already seated when I arrived. "Olivia," he said warmly as he stood to greet me, "I have to say, I've been looking forward to this. Not every day someone builds a real estate empire right under my nose and I don't notice." I sat down and smiled, accepting the wine list from the sommelier. Sometimes the strongest moves are the quiet ones. George nodded thoughtfully. "Your family seems surprised by your success. My son Michael, in particular, keeps asking how you did it." "Does he?" I raised an eyebrow as I chose a wine. Funny, I thought he was only interested in losing other people's money on overpriced projects. George chuckled, actually chuckled. "You've got a sharp tongue to match that sharp mind," he said. "Michael's not used to being turned down. He's not used to doing homework either, or turning a profit." The wine arrived, rich, dark, and smooth. George raised his glass. "To new partnerships." I clinked mine with his. "Maybe. Are you ready to talk about the Marina District project?" He blinked. That caught him off guard. He had kept that project secret for months. "How did you know about that?" I met his eyes. "Because it's my job to know things, Mr. Lambert, like the fact that your project stalled after that environmental survey came back. I have a solution, if you're interested." For the next 2 hours, we talked real business, not the social club gossip my family mistook for success, but numbers, plans, land use, and deals that could change the city. By the time dessert arrived, we had outlined a partnership that would turn the waterfront into something powerful, and make us both very wealthy. As we finished, George's phone buzzed. He glanced down and smiled. "Your mother just invited me to dinner next week. She's very persistent." "Let me guess," I said, laughing. "She mentioned her brilliant daughter would be there?" He shook his head. "Actually, she mentioned your sister Amanda, said she had a real talent for investments." I laughed again. Mom was still trying to make Amanda the family star. She hadn't realized the game had already changed. "Give her my regrets," I said, standing. "I'll be in Singapore next week closing a deal." George stood, offered his hand. "You know, Olivia, I've been in this business 30 years. I built my fortune through family money and connections, but you built this yourself, in secret, while your own family thought you were failing. That's impressive." I shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, George, but honestly, I should thank them. Being underestimated, that gave me the space to grow without their interference." Outside, my driver waited beside the car, not the old Civic my family knew, but a sleek black Mercedes I kept for work. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my father. "Olivia, please, we need to talk. Things don't have to be like this. We're family." I stared at those last 2 words for a long time. Family. They kept saying that word, but I wasn't sure it meant the same thing to them as it did to me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the lease agreements for the Wellington, the luxury building I now owned, including the penthouse where my parents lived. It was time to review their rental terms. After all, this was business, and I'd learned early on how to separate business from emotions. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring more phone calls, more guilt, more pressure. But tonight? Tonight I had contracts to review. Let them sit around their emergency family dinner table without me. I had much bigger tables to sit at.